Welcome to the Acrylic Portrait Painting Challenge Masterclass, lesson number 6, adding highlights to your acrylic portrait. I hope you're doing well, and I'm excited that you're here again and we're ready to take this painting to the next step. We finished up in the last lesson really establishing the darker values, and the painting is looking so much more complete now. We have a good variety of tonal values in the painting. We have the established mid-tone that we had from the very beginning, and now we have those really dark shadows under his arms, under the table, the kerosene container. So it's really starting to take form here, and I like what we've been able to achieve, and I really love the painting progress I've seen from the students. I mean, off the charts good. You know, the detail, the forms, the shading that's being built up. A monochromatic painting really gives you that ability to be able to concentrate on the tonal values, the differences between the lights and the darks without the distraction of color. So if you haven't taken this challenge, you can still join in. On this particular challenge, I have everything open. So you can even join in after the fact, after this challenge is officially over in the spring. I have these lessons up. So go ahead and sign up for the challenge at realisticacrylic.com/spring-acrylic-portrait-painting-challenge. And actually, I think I have that website shortened to just realisticacrylic.com/acrylic-portrait-painting-challenge. Just to make it simpler. So I have the link in the description of the video. You can go ahead and check that out. And I'd love to have you take part in this challenge and go ahead and sign up and enjoy. But for right now, what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to be adding in the highlights. We've already, like I said, established the midtones, the darkest values, although they still can get darker. But we have a good sense of what's taking place here. It's time to add in those highlights. And because we had that ground that we put over the top of this in the beginning, that kind of neutral tone over the whole thing, where the lightest values are not white, but they're actually gray. As you can see, evidenced by this white card. It's a little darker than the white card. We will now put in some highlights. But before we do that, we're going to have to add just a little bit more to the darkest tones, just so that we can really set the stage for that contrast. And watch this portrait come alive when you add your highlights in. It's going to be an amazing transformation in this lesson. So stick with me here. It's going to be awesome, but let's dive in with a word of prayer before we actually put brush to canvas. Father, I ask a blessing here on this painting. I pray you'd help me to be able to teach this next step. Bless the students, Lord. I pray that you would just provide everything they need, the inspiration, the time, the strength to be able to continue to paint this portrait, and let them learn the skills, Lord, that will propel them to pursue their calling as artists and to become better artists if they're already doing that. So, Lord, I pray that you'd help me to be able to pick the right shades of color and apply them correctly. I pray that for the students. Bless this painting, Lord, and I pray that it would be inspirational and transformational. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, well, let's get started here. Like I said, we are going to just block in a little bit more. We're actually not blocking in. We're kind of past that stage. But we're just going to push those darkest values a little bit more. Using ivory black, ultramarine blue, and a touch of alizarin crimson. So we're just kind of sticking with this color profile here. I don't know if we're going to have to use these other colors on the palette. Maybe not, but it's good just to keep things as simple as we can for as long as we can here. So let's darken this area below the table just a bit more. And I'm going to say probably in the next 10-15 minutes or so, we'll be able to get to the highlights. And that's going to be really neat to see that happen. So for now, again, we're just going to push this contrast a bit more. And that's going to make a difference. So let's go ahead and Yeah, we've got to get it nice and dark under the table. And then we're also going to darken the Bible a little bit more. Now we're just using a flat brush. This is a size 6, so that works pretty well for this process. And you'll find a brush that you like that works well for you. And when you do, you just kind of want to stick with that brush. But again, we're just darkening some of these darkest values a bit more, so that when we do add that light, it's really going to look good and stand out nicely. All right, so now let's darken this area next to the table. In fact, let's just switch brushes. We're going to go to something a little bit larger right now, just so we can get a little better coverage and a little smoother coverage. So we've got this big size 8. This is almost, I'd say, a 3/4 inch flat. And we'll actually let this go over on top of the vest a little bit. There's maybe some slight differences in the color temperature. Some of these colors, you have to be careful for that. All right, we just want to kind of smooth this over everything. Darken that whole left side, and I think that that's going to make a difference. Darken under this chair. The curtain can get a little bit darker too. We'll use some brush strokes going horizontally now to kind of balance out the other ones. Now, you'll have a little bit of variation in your color, but overall it should work pretty nicely because we're just using really 3 colors at this point. I do want to darken the curtain a little bit, and this will be nice when we darken this curtain enough so that when we add the highlight to the man's face, it really stands out nicely, and that's going to be important to do that. So I'm cutting along the edge of his knuckles and his wrist and all of that. And then we'll bring this blend into the middle. So you want to start from the darkest edge and work your way out when you're blending. Okay, so the, excuse me, that way the majority of your paint has been applied on these darker areas, and now your brush is starting to get exhausted. Not that your brush is getting tired from working, that might happen to us, but what I'm trying to say is that your brush actually begins to, lose that paint supply on it. The amount of paint on your brush is now dwindling, and then you can use that to your advantage. You can begin to do a little bit of dry brushing as you get into the lighter areas. So that does make a difference. So we really want to just use this to our advantage and try doing some different brushstroke patterns, diagonal brushstrokes, going across, again, can help. And then you can blend that vertically too. Just that way, you'll really get a nice smooth look on your glazes. Now I see that it's just a little bit darker on the top here with these curtains, and then it fades down to a little bit lighter on the bottom. All right, so this is good. And let's add a little bit of a darker value to the hair. We'll just use this larger brush and just kind of darken this whole thing in general. And darken the clothing a little bit too. Now let's darken the face as well, because when we get to that area where we're going to be, I have to switch brushes now. I got to go to my smaller flat because there's too much precision work as we get in toward these facial features. But anyway, we want to establish a good sense of contrast here. Good sense of contrast for those highlights to stand out of. So we just push this a little bit further. All right, and I'm going to darken the wrist just a bit more as well. There we are. Just darken this a little bit more. And we'll darken the fingers a little bit. And yeah, that's good. That's good. Now let's darken this area down here by the elbow. We'll just add a darker value right. Oh, add a little dried piece of paint. Sometimes you'll have that from your palette will start to dry and you'll pick up these little pieces of dried paint that'll get caught in what you're doing. You just pull it out, no big deal. So you just get a little bit of a nice shadow from his elbow. And we'll darken this area here, the shadow being cast from the other elbow, and then this allows the arm to have a bit more contrast. All right, and should have a little bit of glaze here. Now we're going to show kind of the wood grain of the table, but there's a reflection being cast by the highlight of his elbow onto the table, and that's a really important distinction to capture. We do want to darken this part of the table, and I'm just kind of going to fade this out a bit, but you want to get that reflection captured there. And we don't want to neglect that kerosene container, so let's make sure we get that in and just establish a little bit more of a darker value. It's kind of, there's a slightly darker spot right in the center. I want to establish that, and then down below a little darker as well. And then up on this nozzle, it's also a little bit darker too. So we're going to just capture that as well. All right. That's good. Now, I think we're starting to pretty soon get to a stage where we can add in that other highlight, but I think the arm has to get a bit darker. We've really established a sense of contrast here with the shadows, with the actual values on the vest. And when I mean actual value, I mean, you know, his vest is literally darker than his white shirt. But there's also the shadows that change the perceived value of what we're seeing. And so we have the perceived value being rendered by those shadows, the actual value, the actual tint or color of his vest, but the perceived value of his arm needs to get darker too. And that's an important part. Even though it's white, it's actually quite dark. And when you look at the reference photo, you can see that. Look how dark that is. It's a very dark gray on this white shirt. And so we really want to capture that. And then I think once we do, we'll be ready to put down the highlight for those really cool areas that need to be highlighted. You're going to love that part. But let's go ahead and just darken his sleeve. And we're going to take this larger size 8. It's like 3/4 inch flat. We'll get a nice glaze here and show you this on the white card. This is what we're working with here. So nice, and this is what we've kind of been working with for everything, and it's a nice even tone. We're going to go ahead and put that on his shirt. And let's see, we want to leave this area open. So I think I'm going to darken like this. I'm going to darken this part. I'm going to darken this part. And I'm just going to kind of fade it away at the top because it does need to be just a little bit lighter right there. And I think that'll work. And then we're going to use more pressure to get more paint to come out, and we're going to darken the arm right here and here as well. Now we want to use a smaller brush. You're going to just switch to this smaller flat, this size, whatever it is, size 6. And we really want to dial in this form here. It's kind of a precise form right here at the sleeve that we want to get in, which will then allow those highlights to really stand out nicely. Now we might have to adjust it a little bit semi-opaquely. If we can at least bring this glaze up to the edge of where it's sketched in, that's gonna really help. I'm going to zoom in more so you really can see what's going on here. So right here I have the sketch lines. You can still see the sketch lines, and we're going to be able to see them for a while until we have more paint on here. But I really want to get this defined edge, and I think that's going to set the stage nicely. All right. So I think that's probably pretty close. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of a glaze up here just to tighten up this form of this vest. We have a highlighted area on there, and then we have the collar just slightly in shadow, even though it's white. We need to get a bit of a shadow there for that. Maybe just add a hint of this darker color here. We're not going to really be able to see what's going on entirely till we get in those highlights. One last thing I need to do is just put in a little shadow here for the spindle of the chair. The Bible could get a little bit darker right here. We'll just have to come back and darken certain areas more. But at some point you say, it's just time to get in that highlight. So let's do it. Let's get in the highlight. So now this is where the fun begins. I'm looking forward to this process. I'm going to, let's see, take a round brush, I think, at least for part of it. So I'm going to start kind of left to right. Well, no, we're gonna take that flat because we have the window to do first. Yeah, we have the window to start with. So let's go ahead and take some titanium white, dip our brush right in, scoop up a good amount, and set it off to the side. You want to make sure you really get that in there nicely. Let's just zoom this out, and we're going to, whoops, I'm going to just take this to the window area. And we'll block in that part. And we're just going to basically use this almost straight titanium white. Add a little bit of fresh matte medium to the palette just to make sure it's fluid. And we're going to start blocking that in. So right here, let's just start to block this in. Now we can make it a little more fluid yet. We can hit it with a couple of layers if need be. That'll be just fine. Yeah, so this is where the light is coming in. And just fill this in. Just kind of follow in your sketch lines and keep your edges nice and sharp. Rest your hand on the canvas if you need to, and then use that chisel edge of the brush to really get this nice edge going up to his back. Here it'll be a little harder to get that hard edge if you're right-handed. Now you can smooth out everything. Smooth it out after you've got your areas filled in. And just graze your brush over, keeping it at a nice, almost parallel angle with the canvas. Don't keep it perpendicular. This is not the time for that. Keep it perpendicular when you're pushing the paint in the beginning of the layer, but after you're smoothing it out, you want to just drag it across. All right, now I think we will need that smaller brush. I think we'll need that round brush for this next portion. So let's go ahead. We're going to start just dabbing some of the paint in here. Yeah. So here is where it gets a little tricky. We want to really delineate these forms. Let's just spray the palette quick and keep this paint nice and moist. I love this sprayer. It's a Flairosol sprayer. It's really cool. Works well. And it keeps the paint nice and moist so that it's really easy to get these details in. And that's important. So having your paint almost to the consistency of warm honey, like honey that you warmed up in the microwave or you put inside a kettle of tepid water. This is what you want. You want something very fluid. All right, we're just gonna flow this right in here. And let's just zoom in a little bit further so you really can see what's going on. Now, we're going to cut in and show that shape of the collar. If we miss it, that's okay. We can always get it later on semi-opaquely. In the glazing technique, we still do some things opaquely. And this is opaque right now too, this titanium white. But I'm liking, I just like the idea of having a mid-tone first, a ground, and then putting the lighter on top of it. And all of this was kind of set up by a mistake, by that mistake that I made in the original sketching stage when I sealed in the sketch and accidentally smeared some of the pigment of the colored pencil. And I just thought, let's roll with this process here. And you have to do that. You have to realize that in all things in life, God is in control. And if you just kind of give up the illusion that you're in control, because we all have this illusion that we're in control and we're not, we'll find life goes so much better when we just recognize that God is in control and he promises to work everything together for the good of those who love him and those who are called by his purpose, called according to his purpose. And that's an awesome promise. Just as I paint today, I was going through some difficulties and some trials. But we prayed and God worked it all out. Sometimes he works it out in such a way that things were just about how they were when they started before the trial. And then sometimes he works it out that things are even better than they were before the trial. That you're like, oh yeah, I'm kind of glad that happened. I mean, it actually, this thing that I thought was such a difficult occurrence in my life, so stressful, brought so much pain, could actually be used to bring about a blessing. I know I'm not one to talk about this, but you just think as an example of a woman giving birth to a child, the incredible pain she goes through. I was there for all three of my children being born. I couldn't do much to help my wife except try to fan her with the folder that they gave us that had our documents in it. But she was going through all of that incredible pain, that terrible pain. But as a result of having gone through that pain, we have 3 blessings today. We have 3 beautiful children. So we just think of these trials that actually can produce something good. But during the trial, they don't seem that way. And so, in this painting here, well, this is about a man who, is going through a difficult time, but it could symbolize anybody, whether man, woman, or child, going through a difficult time. And I remember when I, originally posed for this image here, because the original painting I did was called Smoldering Wick. And it was when I was going through a tough time and I was questioning my faith. I mean, not so much that I didn't believe that God, was able to save me, or that he existed. It was more of I was questioning my own salvation, thinking, man, how many times have I screwed up? Could God possibly forgive me again? And then while I was just feeling discouraged and almost in despair, I was reading my Bible, and I happened along this verse in Isaiah 42, and it says, "A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out." And when I read that verse, it just so encouraged me. It so filled me with joy that I thought, I've got to capture this image. I've got to capture this concept of this suffering servant that, actually encourages people who are going through a tough time. And I said, I'm a bruised reed, I'm a smoldering wick, but God's not going to break me. He's not going to snuff me out. He's going to fan this little flicker of a flame, this passion I have for him, into just a raging fire of passion for him. And I just really felt so much joy that I thought, I've got to paint this picture. And that is actually where this image came from. This man who's, sitting at his desk reading his Bible and getting encouragement from those words. And that's something God has done for me so many times. And so I really wanted to capture this image. And so that's where this idea came from. So I did a painting based on a series of images, and this is just one of those images that I had modeled for, and my brother-in-law helped me, and we did a photo shoot. And so this is kind of a variation of that painting I did back in 2016 called Smoldering Wick. And what's interesting too is that, when I came up with this idea for the painting, it was maybe 2015. It wasn't until maybe a year later that I had the time to paint it. And I said, I just need to paint it, because I had this sketch and then I did the painting later. And what was interesting was that, and I'm just basically just filling in the wrinkles for his face. So that's what's happening right now. But just to continue with my story, there is a point where I didn't have money for rent, because when you're an artist and you do it full time like I did, I started off just doing art full time after my job was downsized from the Great Recession. And so we didn't have money for rent at all. And around 2015, 2016, I got this call from my landlord saying, when are you going to get me the rent money? And I was like, I don't know what to do. And anyway, I prayed and I asked God for help, but I still felt discouraged. But I had an art show the next day, and I just finished not this particular painting, but a variation of this image here, which was in color, Smoldering Wick. And I just finished that painting. You might have seen it if you've seen my work before. And it was my best painting up to this point. It was a 30 by 40 inch. I put my heart and soul into it, all these glazes, and just poured everything I had into this image, because it was capturing this moment in my life where God encouraged me. And after having gone through this inner turmoil, he gave me such joy that I wanted to share it with others. So I wanted it to be my best work. I had this art show, and people had asked about it, and got some people kind of chatting and wondering what it was about, but not really any interest. But anyway, before I actually went into the studio, I prayed this prayer. I said, God, you're a big God, so I'm going to pray a big prayer. I pray I would sell Smoldering Wick today. I didn't feel full of faith or anything, but I'm just like, well, let's just pray big. Why not? And even though, like I said, I was fighting discouragement that whole day at the art show, I put a smile on my face and shared what the painting was about. And later on, this couple came up and they asked me what it was about, and I shared what it was about. Well, they didn't, seemed to resonate with the message a whole lot that I shared, but they really liked the lighting in the image. They liked what it portrayed, and they felt a connection to it. And one person said to the other, "Hey," and they were just talking quietly, did you pay off the card? Yeah, where should we put this? Should we put it above the grand? I don't know, maybe we should. Did you pay off the credit card? And just kind of going back and forth. My mouth is just shut, right? I'm just zip my lip and like, let them hash it out. I know enough about sales that you shouldn't, disrupt people when they're having a discussion. So they just kind of hashed it out. And then they asked, do you take credit cards? I'm like, yeah, I can take credit card right here on my phone right now. You can run it through. And they said, we'll buy it. I'm like, sweet. I'm just trying to contain my joy, I'm like, okay. And I put the card through and it was approved. And I'm like, congratulations, you now own this painting. And there it was. After they left, I was just like, Lord, what did you just do? I asked that I would be able to sell this painting today, and I did. And I'm like, wow, God, I have rent money. I mean, not only rent money, but I had enough to take my wife and family out to dinner and celebrate. I mean, God is so good. And so I know I kind of strayed off the little painting process here a little bit, but I hope you don't mind me sharing that story with you. It's just really, really special to me. And, just the fact that God did this, even though I wasn't full of faith. I mean, my faith was just small, but the Bible says it's just faith the size of a mustard seed. That's all that's needed. And so with the little bit of faith I had, even though I still felt so discouraged, I just prayed that prayer that I would sell the painting. And I did. And we had rent money. And God provided for us. And he's done this for us many, many times. So all that to say, if you feel like a bruised reed and a smoldering wick, don't give up. Seek God. Get the strength from him you need. Light arises in the darkness. Light arises in the darkness, the Bible says, unto the upright. So when you seek God, he will come to you at the right time, and he'll give you that joy, that encouragement, that help, that wisdom that you need. And he oftentimes allows us to go into these places where there's no way out, where it seems so dark and so hopeless, so that we'll learn to not trust in ourselves, to get away from being dependent on our own resources, and to trust in the living God who cannot fail. So I just invite you to do that. Trust in the living God, trust in Jesus. And not only will he help you in this life, but he will give you salvation. He'll give you eternal life in the next life as well. Because Jesus paid the price for your sins to be forgiven, just like mine. And it's an awesome thing. He did that by shedding his blood and by rising again. And you know what? I know that I know this is a painting lesson, but this is who I am. I'm a Christian, and I'm just going to share it with you. I hope it encourages you. Thank you for just being gracious enough to listen to me sharing this story. And that's what this painting is all about. I shared this in my Facebook group and on my email with my email subscribers, but God has recently called me to do these paintings of prayer, and it came out of a time of prayer, of wondering what was kind of going on with my art business. And I just really felt like this is the desire I have in my heart. And I was just kind of fighting it because it didn't seem practical. But God has called me to paint images of people praying. And that's why I'm doing this for this particular lesson, to be obedient to that call. And so, yeah, I hope that encourages you, and let's continue on as we add these highlights. How appropriate, though, to be talking about light arising in the darkness as we're painting these highlights over the backdrop of having added in all these dark values. How appropriate is that? Well, anyway, let's get back to the technical discussion of the painting. So we're just adding these highlights using this round brush, and we're trying to leave some vacancies for the midtones. And so that's really important, like right here on the sleeve, and we'll just move the camera down a little bit. We're just going to leave some little vacancies for some of these midtones. And as we get in toward this right side, there's going to be some really interesting shapes that we're going to try to sculpt via the highlights, but we might have to come back in and redefine them with some grayish tones, and that's okay. But for now, let's see what we can do. So there's a form right here, and it depends kind of on how you sketch this out, what you're going to be able to see with your sketch lines. But we want to get this sense of the wrinkles on the shirt, and keep in mind that this part of the elbow is very close to the lamp, so that's really getting illuminated there, and that's important to make sure this is very bright and crisp. And I'm just going to kind of fade this area away because it's actually a little bit lighter right there. So I'm just going to try to just dab that and get it a little lighter. Now we've got, let's see, a wrinkle in the middle that we want to kind of try to capture that. Hopefully we can. Right here, so it kind of flows in like this, and then there is a highlight right here. We'll just try to establish this form as simply as we can for right now. Something like that. And we'll have to, hit this with another layer and try to smooth this out if you can. Like that. And I think this will be good for now, but we'll do another layer. But we have a lot more to go. We're still wanting to do the highlight on the Bible, so we're just going to hit this right page here and just try to continue on. So we're going to put a highlight, especially on this lower part of the pages. Anything that looks like it has an almost white value, we want to establish that. So we're putting a highlight right here on the page, and then trying to get a nice crisp edge. There we are, and then we just dab in this little bit on the top. That's good. And now let's get in the highlight for the lamp. That's going to be fun. So we're going to illuminate not only the flame, but the top of the chimney, because that's actually quite bright as well. So that whole area gets some paint on it. The burner, which is the metal below it, gets some of a highlight on it. We're trying to make a distinction, though, to show these pieces of metal a little bit lighter in the center. And then the flame is kind of non-existent at this point, but we'll be able to dial it in later. I'm going to have to switch to my flat brush. All right, so let's switch to this smaller flat brush. And for now, we'll just kind of have a diffused light here like that. And we'll add some more to this later. We'll also want to get a sense of the, we're going to not want to really lose these edges yet. But I do want to work around the lamp and kind of set the stage for this very light wall. So the wall is illuminated by the lamp, so it's quite bright. I'm just sculpting around the lamp for right now. Okay, and now I'm going to switch to my larger brush, this in the 3/4 flat here. Again, we have some matte medium on this glaze, so it is translucent. This is what it looks like on the white card. So you actually can see through it a little bit right there. Or if you want to see it on something that's got almost black on it, this is what it looks like. So it is somewhat translucent. But let's go ahead and blend this out, radiate it out from the lamp. All right, it's got a little bit of a edge there that I have to smooth out. There we go. We radiate this out, get this on the wall. That already began to set up and dry, so I'll have to overcome that. All right, and we're going to use a little bit of matte medium and just kind of thin this out here. Now there's going to be more layers going on, so please don't be alarmed if you get some blotchiness here. I'm getting a little blotchiness. I'm not worried about it. You know, God will help me to work this out, and He'll help you to work it out. So just do the best you can with this, and we'll do some more layer work to smooth it out. It kind of has to be brushed really quickly, and I was doing a little bit too much with that white card at the moment to smooth it out. But that's okay. There, and that'll work for now. And then there's this hot spot on the table. We're going to switch to this smaller flat. Put that in right down here. So this gets quite bright. This is a nice highlight to capture this reflection of the lamp on the table. Just like that. And it does actually get a little bit into the glasses, so we're just going to use a line with the edge of the brush and bring that behind the lens of the glass a bit. Just like that. And there's a little bit also of a reflection. Oh, that's interesting on the table, and I kind of missed that, but we'll get that on the other side. Now the doily has a little bit of light on it as well, so let's use our round brush for that. So we'll just put a little bit of a highlight on the doily here. Again, we want to keep this paint fluid. Now, when you're putting the highlight on the doily, don't bring it all the way up to the edge, because the base of the lamp is casting a shadow. Being that the flame is right above the base, it's casting a shadow there. So what's actually going on is that we've got the highlight right on the edges here, right on the perimeter of the doily. So that's important to see that distinction. So I want to make sure we have this in the shot here. My camera's kind of spring-loaded. I have it on a metal armature, and because of the cable attached to it, it doesn't like to go too far over to the right. So I have to kind of push it in that direction. All right, so we add that in. And then we do want to get in the highlights here for the cloth on that tray, the cloth that would be used to clean the globe of the lamp, the chimney, I should say. Just bring this right down there. I might have a little bit of difficulty getting that over there. See what we can do. I just want to make sure you can see some of this detail in. Just a little bit of the detail work will be off camera, but we'll try to get it in as best as we can. All right, so a couple of highlights here. There, and then you can see what that looks like as we have just a bit of the highlight. And then also we add a bit to the kerosene can on the top as well. Let's just move that up there. All right. I'll have to work on my camera setup to just get that camera to move over better. Come up with solutions for that. Okay. One thing we didn't do is we need to do a little more work on this other sleeve right here. And just make sure we have some of the highlights put in. I don't want to neglect that. So there's a highlight right here. Gotta make sure this is flowing off of my brush really nicely. Using kind of some short, choppy strokes for that. And then we've got a nice strong highlight right here. We want to make sure we capture that. And right here and here. But this is not absolute white. Because of the angle, this actually here is a little bit darker than white. So we want to make sure we don't paint the whole section as white. There we are. Get a couple little dabs. Okay, and let's get the top of his hair. Let's do that. That's going to be important. So make sure that we can see everything here. All right, because there are a couple little spots where the light is really catching up there nicely. I want to make sure we get all those highlights in. And then this highlight of this lock of his hair that's kind of flowing in out of the top part and then going back in towards the scalp. We want to put that in. All right. Now there is just a little bit of a highlight here, right here on this upper arm. Just a sliver. It's like a little triangular pattern. We just put that in right there. And then let's go back to that lamp and we're just going to lighten this up a little more, that flame. Yeah, just kind of have this flow out a bit more like that. And just kind of soften up the edges. All right, that's good. I think, oh, let's see, do we have, oh, we need a little bit on that frame, don't we? Okay, we'll do that and then we'll call that good. Let's just get a little bit of a highlight on the bottom of the frame. So just a couple little dabs going across here, showing some of these textures and these details. We just try to make it fairly random. I don't want to put in every little detail here. And yeah, maybe we'll put in just a little bit of a highlight right here on this border. Right here and here. And then a little bit up in that part. And that'll be good. And then we have this area here of the lamp where it got a little blotchy. I'm just going to kind of fill in the cracks. It's almost like filling in, like spackling your wall if you have some imperfections, or smoothing it out with a taping knife or trowel. You know, we're just going in here and filling in some of these imperfections. And that's okay, we can do that. All right, that's good. I think we're at a good stopping point. There's obviously more we could do, but yeah, we have to basically bring this lesson to a close. We're running out of time. But I like where we're at for the day. So adding these highlights to it really brought this to a new level. Very, very happy with where things are at. And I hope you will be too by the end of this lesson. I hope you're already happy with what you have. And in fact, taking joy and delight in what you've created, even despite the imperfections, is fuel. It's inspiration to help you carry on in your portrait painting. So don't be super critical with your own work. Definitely push yourself to do your best, but you know, take it all in stride, especially, you know, looking at how far you've come. If you've done portrait painting in the past, and if this is your first portrait painting, then just really relax and enjoy the process. Because if you can paint a portrait that looks like a person for your first painting, that's something to be proud of. It's challenging to paint a portrait. So if this looks like a person and you have a sense of the lighting and you have a lamp there and a table and a picture frame and the wall, and it looks like all of those things, you know, just be happy with that. But definitely pursue excellence, and you will be amazed at what you can create. God will help you as you seek Him and continue to paint and practice and strive for perfection, and you'll do very well. All right, well, thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Check out Realistic Acrylic Portrait School at realisticacrylic.com. And I have several tips, tutorials, and lessons there. And of course, sign up for the challenge. I would love to have you take part as well. For now, though, I look forward to teaching you in our next lesson, lesson 7, where we're going to dial in some of the nuances on this painting. But for now, take care. God bless. We'll talk to you soon. Mm.